Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Please continue. Yeah.
so good afternoon, everyone, and good morning. So, in this session, we'll be discussing about APIs. So, as discussed already by Kishore, that what is an API? So, it's an application programming interface. It's a server that you can use to retrieve and send data using code. So, APIs are most commonly used to retrieve data. So, he also gave an example about how Uber and Ola uses Google Maps to detect the location of a driver. So we use Uber and Ola. There we see Google Maps, right? So this Ola and Uber does not have its own satellite where it can, locate. So what it does is it will use Google Maps API. It will use Google Maps data. It cannot directly use Google Maps data. So what it does is there will be a layer in between. So this Uber and Ola, they will ask the Google Maps APIs. They'll make a request, and then what it this Google Maps API will do is it will request to the server, I mean main Google Maps systems, and then from there we'll get a response. So basically, it is a type of messenger which will transfer the data from one place to other place. And one more example, if you want to give me, sometimes if you install an application, any new application in your mobile phone, so there you get an option of sign up with Google or sign up with Facebook. So in that place also we use APIs. What this will do, suppose you installed an app like Myntra or Nika something, they'll ask you sign up with Facebook or sign up with Google. They will not validate you as a user separately. Instead, what they will do is they will use this Google servers, because this Google and Facebook already they will verify a user, and all the details will be stored in those database systems. So basically, we are using, in that case also we are using this APIs concept there. So yeah, so for one more instances, if you're visiting a blog on any website, so your web browser is making a request and to the web server, then it will respond back with the content of the web page. So that is about API. So how can you make API request? Is commonly we use a request library, so that we will make a request using that request library. The request library is not part of the standard Python library, so we have to install it. So basically, there are four types of web APIs. APIs are broadly accepted and used in web applications. So the first is public APIs, which we like commonly use. I mean, in our this will not have any restrictions. It's open and available for use. Okay, so next is partner APIs. This partner API only available to specifically selected and authorized outside developers or API consumers. For example, any business to business activities. If we have any travel agents, and then this type of APIs will be shared between the partners. So that is partner APIs, and we have internal APIs. So internal APIs is nothing but, suppose we are a team, then our suppose if we are in a company, then we have this HR department, sales department. So there we can share this API. So those are called as internal APIs. It's intended only for use within the enterprise to connect systems and data within the business. So the last is composite APIs, are generally combined two or more APIs to craft a sequence. Like if you use two or more APIs, and that is composite APIs. So that was just a brief intro about APIs. Let's see what is in our Jupyter notebook. So first is I'll install the request package, pip install request. So by running the following command, so it says already satisfied. Next is I'm importing request package. This we have to do for this is just a Python module that you can use to send all kinds of HTTP requests. Let's see, I'm just using a very small basic random user.me. That's an API I'm using. So here I'm using this request package and get method to get this, and the response what I get is 200. I think if you remember, I told you that response 200, that means it's a successful execution. So if I want to see the text, what's inside it, then I'm using response.text. So I got this text here, random text here. So this was just a very basic of API consumption. We can say we just got this information using this API. So this was a very basic thing. So we managed to fetch our first random user from this API. So next is we have a concept of endpoints and resources. So basically, the first thing you need to know about API is the API URL. So this is the base URL. So sometimes you can see in this website here, the API is at the last, at the end, and sometimes the API will be at the beginning like this. So both are also okay. So that is what is endpoints. So next is this is one API called as dog API. What I'm doing is I'm just passing this API, and I want to see by using this request.get method, and I'm seeing the text inside this. It's just a very normal message like the dog API. It's just giving me this text over here. Now this is the endpoints, I would say. This was my base URL and this is the endpoint. So just want to explain you the difference between the base URL and the endpoints here. So that's it. Nothing new here. We have already seen all these things. So next, there is a concept of request and response. So as we have seen, request is, I think we all know, we are requesting it and then we get a response. So request is nothing but it contains relevant data regarding your API request calls, such as your base URL, the endpoint, or the method used. So that all comes in request, and the response is nothing but the relevant data returned by the server, like including the data or the content, this data or the content or text. Those comes under response. Okay, the status codes and the headers, this all this comes under response. So these are the two components you can say, response and request. Next comes status codes. So status codes are one of the most important pieces of information to look for in any API response. So this is very important because this will tell you if your request was successful or not successful or what was the problem. So like also Kishore have also covered this thing in detail. So if you get a response returned as 200, that means it's okay. So that means your request was successful. If it is 400, that means it's a bad request. Your request is either wrong or missing some information. So these are the status codes with its respective descriptions. So most of the time we get this 404 not found error. That means the request resource does not exist. And if we get 401 unauthorized, that means your request requires some additional permissions. So sometimes you also get 500 internal server error, as he told that 500 series is server issues, 400 is something related to the permissions and all. So that is what it is. So then just if you want to know the status codes, you can use this dot status code or dot reason, then you get to know the status codes. So this dog response is returning me responses 200. That means it was a successful request. So what I'll do now is I'll just try to add include a typo here and check whether what type of response I get. So I've just changed this breathes S to breathes Z. I'm just adding this typo here. So you can see we are getting a response of 404 here. That means the request resource does not exist. You can also do the same thing by using dot status code or reason. You'll get the same thing. You'll get the reason here. So the next is the same is for the same thing. I used dog APIs. So just use your cat APIs. So it's the same thing. I'm getting texture if I use dot text method. Then this is all the same. Then we have a concept of HTTP headers. So we have some HTTP headers are defined are used to define a few parameters governing requests and responses. So this will tell you we have some this this parameters here, like accept what type of, if we use this parameter, it will tell you what type of content the client can accept. If you use this content, it will tell you what type of content the server will respond with. So these are some of the parameters which HTTP headers has. So if you want to inspect the headers of the response, you can just use response.headers and it will send you all the headers. Okay. So the same way I'm using this request.get for this API, I want the headers. So it's returning me the headers over here. So in this case, I'm not defining any headers over here. It is just returning me all the default headers. So then there is another concept of custom headers. Basically, this is another standard that might come across when consuming APIs. If you want to use custom headers, that usually starts with X in this format, X dash here. So if you want to, you can. So basically, it's just a dictionary here with a key value pair, and you can send them along with your request. So what I'm doing here is I have just given this X request ID, and it is giving me this headers over here, the headers which I want. So this is custom headers here. Next is content type. So this will tell you which type of content uh, it has. So now the response I'm saying for this, what is the content type here? So it is telling me it is application/JSON. So it's telling me that the content type is JSON. Suppose if you have some other, if you have, this is another API. So if I want to check the content type here, it is throwing me this HTML content here. So basically this content type will give me the type of content the API has. So that was about content. Next is response content. So the same way, it is no big difference. Just dot text will return you the if something is in text format, and the content will return you the if it is in non-textual format. So these are the two different methods, dot text and dot content. Next, we have a concept of HTTP methods, as already discussed. Suppose I'm using the same API. So if we want to call an API, there are two different methods. So that you can use to specify what action you want to execute. For example, if you want to fetch data, we have seen we use this type of method, .get method. So the same way we have some other methods, like if you want to create some resource, use post, request.post, and then the API. If you want to update some information, then we use request.put and then the API. That means I'm telling the server that I want to update this information in this API. And if I want to delete, I use request.delete and then the API. So you might have noticed that I'm getting this 405 errors in all these three, and I'm getting 200 here in this get method because I can fetch the data. That's why it's not showing me an error. But here, if you see, I'm getting 405, 405, and 405 errors. That means I am not accessible for making these changes here. Method not allowed. The endpoint does not allow for that specific HTTP method. That means I'm not allowed to make any changes other than just fetching the data. I'm not allowed to delete this this API here. I'm not allowed to make any changes. I'm not allowed to create anything. So this was a concept of HTTP methods. So that was about it. Then we have a concept of query parameters. So sometimes when you call an API, you get tons of data that you don't need or you don't require. So for that, what we do is there is a concept of query parameters. What it will do is it will try to filter out the data which you want. So you can see here, this is a YouTube URL link here. You can see in this www.youtube.com, watch till here, this is the paste URL, and this question mark v is equals to, this is called the query parameter here. You can see the v is equal to in this URL, that's the query parameter. So it typically comes after the paste URL here. So if you want to add one more parameter, suppose it's a channel, AMSPARKS channel, and we have a playlist there. So if you specifically want to watch machine learning videos or specifically want to watch web APIs tutorial, then you have to add an extension over here after this base URL. So that is called query parameter. Basically, it will filter out the data, the required data. So you just have to add a question mark before the first query parameter. If you want to add two filters, like if you want to add machine learning and in that you want to add statistics, then you will just give an ampersand between these two links over here. The same way, the YouTube channel link, question mark, you'll give your first parameter here, and then it will be separated by an ampersand, and then you will give your second filter over here. So this is how you add two parameters. So in this API world, query parameters I use as filters. You can send with your API request to further narrow down the responses. So this was it. Suppose we'll take the same example of random user generator here. So it's giving me the entire data here, and I don't need all this data here. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to narrow it down to filter it. I just want the records of the female here. So what I did, I'm just passing this question mark here, and gender is equals to female. For this to know what it is, you have to go through the documentation part. There you will come to know what everything, what you have to pass. So as you can see, according to the documentation, you can use a query parameter gender here. So I'm passing gender is equals to female. So it will just pass me all the records only for the females over here. Okay, so now let's say now we want to generate only female users only from Germany. Now I want to add one more filter as country as a filter or nationality. So what I'll do is I'll just pass this gender is equals to female and ampersand, and then nationality is equals to DE. I think you have to refer the documentation for this. DE stands for Germany. So then this will give me all the records which is from Germany. So these are the two parameters what we have passed. So you can start fetching more specific data from an API just by adding these parameters. Now, what happens is if you want to avoid having to rebuild the URL over and over again. Now, what if I want to add something else like postcode or state or city something else or emails or something else, then I just have to keep adding here, and it will be like a bunch of code over there. So instead of that, what I'll do is I'll just create a dictionary over here and pass all the parameters which I want, like gender, female, or nationality. And you can also add something else if you want. Just have to refer the documentation for that. Then I just created a dictionary over here called query params. And what I'll do is using this get method, I'll pass this API, and then I'll pass the parameter here. This params is supposed to carry query params. So this will fetch me all these details, like this, the one which we did here and the one which we did here, both are the same. It's just that I'm adding this both in this one variable here like this. Okay, so params is equals to query params. That's it, and I got all the details which I need. Next is this was for random user generator API. Now this is for another API, dog APIs. So the same thing, I'm just passing here query params. This is Labradoodle is a kind of breed here. If I want to know what all the breeds, or if I wanted to look for a specific breed called Labradoodle, then I'm doing the same thing. So what I'm doing is, this is my API endpoint, and this is my query params. I'm asking, I'm just asking to fetch the data using this get method. I'm passing this endpoint and this params, and it will give me all the information here. So this is how query parameters is useful to fetch the required data. Next is as I told you, that you are able to filter out all the details. So next, there is a concept of API keys. The most common level of authentication is the API keys. These keys are used to identify you as an API user or customer and to trace your use of the API. Suppose you're trying to scrape my API, or you're using my website. So I want to know what are you doing, or I want to keep an eye on you. So what I do is I try to use a concept of API keys. It's just a level of authentication. So what I do is, this is another API here for NASA. Basically, if basically that will not be a public, like it's a type of encryption or authentication, you can say. So what here I'm using the API of NASA. So this is my endpoint and this is my API key demo key. So what I'm passing in my query params is API keys and these details what I want. Next is I want to get 1 second, just getting this notifications which is disturbing me. Okay, sorry. So yeah, so I've tried to I've requested to get this data and I got responses 200, which is good. Now I'm checking the data. This is my data here. And now I want to see what all photos are there in that NASA's website. So I see that there are 12 pictures. So if I want to see what is the pictures, then I got this link over here from that website. So what I'll do is if I want to see what is the image there, so I'll just copy paste the link here and you get this picture here from this. The link we got is from the from this API. Okay, so the same way I got another image over here. Yeah, this is the same pictures from NASA's API. So that's how APIs are used. So you just have to copy paste this link and open in your browser, and then you'll be able to see. So sometimes what happens is all these details will not be available on your public APIs. For that, you have to have API keys. So this is where API keys are used. So I'll just give an overview what we have discussed. We have just seen how to get the text. This was very basic. This was not a deep dive. This was just to tell you what is what. We have discussed what is request and response. We have discussed the status codes. What each status code, what does it describe? Then we have seen this typos, what type of error we get. And we have seen this HTTP headers. And we have seen custom headers. If you want to have any custom headers, we can give like this. Then we have seen the content type. We get it may be textual, it may be non-textual, depending on the APIs. It may be HTML or it may be JPEG or any type of thing. Then we have this the same thing, text and content. Then this HTTP methods, post, get, put, delete, and we have seen query parameters. And we have seen these API schemes. So this was just a basics of API, I would say. So that was all about in this session. Hope you understood the basics.